Hello everyone and welcome to the Ultimate Beginner's Guide for Kingdoms of Amalur. If you want to be able to jump into the game knowing all you'll need to know to play the way you want, then this is the video for you. This guide applies for both Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning and Re-Reckoning. Doesn't matter which version you have or which DLCs you have installed, this guide will just go over all the basics you really need to know. I've split everything up into sections, with each of those sections being timestamped, so that you can jump to whatever parts are most needed for you. To kick things off, I'm going to go over the 9 different skills in the game, explaining what they do and how best to use them. Before I jump into each of the specific skills and explain what they do, I first want to talk about how you increase your skills. In the character creator, you get a specific start skill bonus depending on what race you choose to play as. One skill will get a 2-point boost, and 2 skills will get a 1-point boost. This means every character will start the game with 4 skill points unlocked before they've even leveled up. And, as expected, when you do level up, you gain 1 point to put into any skill of your choosing. This will be the main way you improve your skills as you play. The base game level cap is 40 and is raised to 50 with the Fatespawn expansion, giving plenty of room to level different skills as you adventure. As you travel around, you can also come across skill trainers, talented individuals who are willing to teach you in exchange for some gold. However, each of these people can only train you once, and they require you to have a certain number of skill points already invested. Basic trainers require you to have 0 to 3 points in a skill, advanced trainers require you to have 4 to 6 points in a relevant skill, and master trainers will only help you out if you have between 7 and 9 points already invested. This does make it a little tricky to use skill trainers effectively, but it's worth noting that you don't need to rely on skill trainers at all unless you're trying to max out all 9 skills. The final way you can permanently increase a skill is by reading the matching skill book. There are a total of 9 of these books in game, 1 for each skill, and upon reading it, that skill will increase by a single point. If you want to find the location of all of these books, you'll be happy to hear that my buddy Kato Genesis has made a guide showing you how to get each and every one. Thanks, Kato! That's it for permanent skill upgrades, though it's worth noting that certain items and destinies can also get you temporary booster skills, so even if you don't have everything maxed out all the time, there's still a way to improve it for a little while. And if worst comes to worst, you can always reset skill points gained from level ups with a Fate Weaver, which is something I'll bring up later in the video as well. Time to get started explaining what each of these skills actually do, starting with Alchemy. This skill is all about making potions and gathering ingredients. The standard level ups of the skill grant the ability increases chance to successfully harvest reagents. What this means is that when you're exploring the world and come across a plant that can be picked, you have a better chance of getting something from it if you have a high alchemy skill. As standard, you're not guaranteed to actually get the crafting component when harvesting, but instead just a chance of getting it. Plants will respawn their reagents over time though, so it's not the end of the world if you don't always get a successful harvest from them. This may make it sound like alchemy level ups aren't that great, but that's because we've only talked about the standard level ups. If we take a quick look at the skill chart, you'll see there's multiple symbols. The blank rectangle is just a standard level up, giving the basic reward and nothing else. But then there's also these ranks which have this fancy symbol, and they're the ones you really want. These are milestones, and each of them will give a significant boost to the skill in some way. In the case of alchemy, the first milestone makes it so that failing to create a proper potion now yields you an unstable potion, rather than nothing. Later milestones let you craft potions with 3 or 4 ingredients, and the final milestone in this skill unlocks every alchemical recipe right away. In order to craft potions, you need to find an alchemical lab. These crafting tables can be found throughout Amalur, but are most commonly seen in settlements, often near potion shops. By activating the crafting table, you will enter into this menu, allowing you to create or experiment. The create option is only useful for mixing together potions you've either made before, or have found a recipe item that details how to make something. The experiment option is where you'll want to start out, as this allows you to mix together ingredients and see what comes out. If you get lucky and mix together the right ingredients, then not only will you mix up the potion, but you'll also learn the recipe, allowing you to quickly craft it from the create menu in the future. Potions can be very powerful consumables to have at your disposal, so it's always worth experimenting and seeing what you can make for yourself. The one potion I think every character will always want to create is the Minor Healing Potion, which requires Ember Eyes and Black Cohosh. That one's a gimme, but I'll leave the rest for you to find out. The second skill to cover is Blacksmithing, and much like our previous one, it's also a crafting skill. At standard, increasing the blacksmithing skill will improve the effectiveness of repair kits. These are items that you can use in order to repair your weapons and armour. We'll touch on that more later, but basically, you don't want your gear to break, or else it becomes useless. So repair kits are a good way to prevent this from happening. As usual though, the more interesting skill ranks are the milestones one, which in blacksmithing provide two different bonuses, either allowing you to break down more items for base components, or use more components when crafting equipment, thereby making it stronger. In order for all this to make sense, we need to head to a blacksmithing forge. These are found all around Amalur, often near weapon merchants. Upon activating this crafting table, you will be met with two options, craft and salvage. The crafting screen is then split up into 4 different sections, depending on what you want to make: weapons, warrior armour, rogue armour, or mage armour. Regardless of what you're making, the process will be the same. You need 2 core components in order to be able to make anything, otherwise you can't craft the item. Beyond these 2 core components are 3 optional crafting additions, though these will require investment into the blacksmithing skill in order to actually use them. Once you've selected all the components you're going to use, you then get to see just how good the item you're making is, and have a chance to either cancel crafting if you don't like the look of it, or confirm and make yourself a weapon or armour piece. Unfortunately, specific requirements aren't shown at this stage, so there's always a chance you could end up crafting an item that's too high a level for you to wield right away, so I'd always recommend dropping a hard save before a smithing session. With the crafting section gone over, you're probably wondering about components. These are what you need to craft the items after all. You'll be able to find random components around the places you adventure, and even buy them from merchants if you so wish, but the main way to get your hands on them will be to use the salvage option at the blacksmithing forge. From this menu, you can destroy various bits of equipment you have in your inventory, in order to gain components which can be used in forging something new. Salvaging is a somewhat random process, so you can never be certain what you'll get, but the more stuff you break down, the more options you have to work with when crafting. Overall, the whole blacksmithing process is essentially just a loop of finding new equipment, salvaging it for components, and then combining those base parts into something better. Rinse and repeat throughout the game in order to get some incredibly powerful gear. Our next skill is Detect Hidden, considered by many to be the best skill in the game. This is because it does 2 things: passively earn you money, and improve your minimap. We'll go over the gold element of that first, as it's the one that increases with every point you invest. The more points you have in this skill, the more gold you find in chests, when destroying crates, or when looting defeated enemies. This all happens passively, so you don't need to overcomplicate things like with the previous skills. The other thing Detect Hidden focuses on is improving the minimap, with milestone skill levels making it so hidden treasures, enemies, secret doors, and more are revealed on your map. This gives you a lot more information to work with, both for how to approach combat and where to find extra loot. It also gives you the ability to disarm traps, which can be useful for dungeon delving. Next up is the Dispelling skill. When travelling through the world, you will sometimes come across these chests, which are glowing purple. In order to get into these containers and loot what's inside, you first have to dispel the ward. This requires you completing a minigame where you have to click on the symbols as the cursor travels around the circle, without clicking on anything else. It can be a bit of a tricky minigame, but the Dispelling skill makes it easier. The more ranks you invest into dispelling, the better your chances of getting into these chests without any negative consequences. And the negative consequences you can end up with are real severe, not only damaging you, but also inflicting you with a curse, a heavy debuff to your character, which can only be cured by visiting a healer. If you do need to get this done, then one can be found in Goreheart, the first village you encounter, but it's much better to just not get cursed, meaning you either need to avoid cursed chests entirely, or invest in the Dispelling skill to make things safer. In a similar vein, we have the Lockpicking skill. This is for cracking open non-magic chests. The more ranks you get, the easier the lockpicking minigame becomes. If you've played Skyrim, then you already know how this works, but if not, then it's just a case of moving your lockpick around in different positions until you're able to get the bar all the way across. Makes more sense visually and is quite easy to figure out, although it does have a tendency to eat through your lockpicks over time. While lockpicks aren't incredibly rare in this game, they're also not found all that often, so the fewer you can break while trying to open chests, the better. There are, however, also Prismir lockpicks in the game, which allow you to instantly open locked chests, though these are incredibly rare. You also have the option to attempt to force a lock, which gives a percentage chance of opening things up without having to do the minigame. Every attempt does consume a lockpick though, so it's only really worth doing this if the percentage is incredibly high. Next up is Mercantile or Mercantile, doesn't matter which way you say it, the ability remains the same. The more ranks of this you get, the better your prices will be when buying and selling items. This has got to be the most straightforward of all the skills, though the milestone skills do add a bit of extra flavour. At ranks 3 and 6 you can destroy junk items in your inventory and get a good bit of gold back when doing so. At rank 10 you can sell stolen goods to any merchants rather than just fences, which is rather handy if you're playing as a thief who hasn't found a reliable buyer of stolen goods. Persuasion is the next skill, and this one simply increases the percentage chance you have when selecting a persuasion speech check in the dialogue menu. You'll see these across many different characters you talk to, and succeeding in these checks will grant you additional rewards. There are about 100 of these checks spread out throughout the base game and the DLCs, though they can be missed quite easily if you're not regularly talking to all the various NPCs. The penultimate skill to go over is Sagecraft, and this is also our last crafting skill, which once again means this is going to be a slightly longer section. First off though, the basic improvement you get every time you level this skill is a better chance for high quality shards to drop when looting, and that means I need to explain what shards are. These are the base components used for crafting gems, which is something you're able to do at a Sagecraft altar. By combining shards together at this crafting station, you can then create weapon, armour or utility gems, which can be socketed into equipment which has these empty slots available. As you increase the Sagecraft skill, you also have the ability to strengthen 2 shards of the same type together, in order to create a single more powerful shard. At rank 7, you can also craft epic gems, which can be used as components when blacksmithing. Honestly, this is one skill that's much easier to understand if you just play around with it for a while, as you get to see firsthand what effects different shards can grant. Final skill of them all is Stealth. As the name would imply, this makes you better at stealth, sneaking, and not being noticed. Every rank of this increases the time it will take for enemies to spot you while you are crouched, and milestone ranks will reduce the sight range for NPCs while you are hidden. If you want to play the game as sneakily as possible, getting stealth kills left, right and centre, then this is the skill you want to focus on. With the lengthy skills section covered, it's now time to talk about Destinies and Abilities. Destinies are essentially the class system for this game, allowing you to switch up the core way in which you play. At the very start of the game, you will have the Fateless One Destiny, which does absolutely nothing at all. But as soon as you get your first level up, you get to choose between Acolyte, Brawler and Rogue. These are the first tier of the Sorcery, Might and Finesse Destinies. You get the option to change your destiny every time you level up, but in order to unlock higher tier destinies, you will need to invest ability points into some of those ability trees. As well as all the fancy abilities you get to spend the points on, every time you invest into one of these trees you get a boost to your health and mana. If you invest in the sorcery tree, then you get a big boost to mana, letting you cast more spells, but only a small boost to health. If you invest into might, then this is flipped, giving you a big health boost and making you more tanky, but a much smaller boost to your mana. And if you invest in finesse, then it's an even split between the two. I want to give a quick overview of the ability trees now. I won't be covering every single ability that you can unlock, as there's a lot of them, but instead just give you a brief guide of how the trees work. Every tree is split up into horizontal rows and vertical columns. The first row of every tree is available right away, but future rows require investment in that tree before they're unlocked. For example, if you want to unlock the second row, then you need to invest 5 points in that ability tree. And if you want to unlock the final row, then you need a total of 70 points invested. When you are investing your points, you can choose either passive or active abilities. Passive are the square abilities, and they are always doing what they say in their description. The circle abilities are active ones, which you assign to the bar at the bottom of the screen, allowing you to use them in combat as powerful spells or tools to aid in a fight. Onto the columns now, where there's only a few things to mention. First off, if you see vertical lines connecting abilities together, then that means you need to first sink a point into the ability below it in order to get the higher up one. The far left column for each tree is the weaponry path, which unlocks various timed, charge and combo moves with the different weapon classes in the game. If you're wanting to vary up your moveset, these are well worth investing in. Just to the right of these abilities are the mastery ones, which will increase damage with specific weapon types. The rest of the abilities you can unlock will grant you a more diverse variety of bonuses, from shooting lightning from your hands to avoiding a death blow and instead becoming stronger from it. Which ability tree you decide you want to invest in will heavily affect which destinies you have available to you. If you only invest in a single tree, then you will only have one set of destinies to choose from, and will logically just pick the highest tier one each time you level up. But if you invest in multiple of them at once, then you'll also have access to hybrid destinies, allowing you a great range of choices and archetypes to work towards. You don't have to panic too much as you level these abilities though, as you can always head to a Fate Weaver in order to reset all of these points and get yourself an entirely new destiny path to walk down. Time to talk about equipment now, which are the items you equip onto your character. Each character can be equipped with a pair of weapons, several armor pieces, 2 rings, and a single necklace. Every item has a rarity rating, as depicted by the text colour on the item name. From worst to best you have common items with white text, infrequent items which have green lettering, rare items which are blue, uniques which will be shown with purple text, and finally sets, occasionally referred to as legendary, which have gold lettering. Uniques and sets are the best you can get, though sets only come in the form of armour, as their special ability is the more pieces you wear of a set, the more bonuses you get. Unfortunately, these fancy bits of gear are most often acquired randomly, so actually getting all the pieces of a desired set can be rather tricky. Let's now take a look at the item cards themselves, as they give you all the information you need to know. In the top left you will see an anvil with a pair of numbers next to it. These tell you the current and max condition of the weapon or armour. If the number on the left ever reaches 0, then the item becomes broken and essentially stops working. If you want to avoid that, then you'll need to repair your gear frequently, either with a repair kit or by visiting an NPC in the world who is able to repair equipment at the cost of some gold coins. At the top right of the item card we have either the damage or defense rating, depending on if it's a weapon or armor piece. This is pretty straightforward. The higher the number, the more damage you are either dealing or able to mitigate. All you need to know for these numbers is you want them as high as they can be. Moving down a little on the item cards, we have either the level or ability requirement. For weapons, it's just the level requirement, which is pretty simple to understand. You need to be at or above the listed level in order to equip the weapon. That's all. For armour, it's a tad more complicated, as you instead need a certain number of points invested into might, finesse, or sorcery. Heavy armour tends to require points in the might tree, light armour needs finesse points, and robes need sorcery investment. This means that if you're only investing in a single ability tree, you can typically wear higher level apparel than if you were focusing on hybrid destinies. In terms of rings and necklaces, there are no such restrictions, so you can wear whichever of those take your fancy. The final part of the item card is the effects section, which takes up the entire bottom half of the card and tells you everything that the item does. This includes the various damage types that a weapon's overall damage is made up of, and any other buffs the item provides to the player. With so much different equipment available to the player in the game, and the fact that you'll want to constantly be upgrading to higher rarity or higher level pieces as you play, it's important to pick up new gear as you travel. But there's a problem. You have an inventory limit. At the start of the game, this will allow you to carry 70 different items, though you can purchase backpacks from vendors in order to increase this by 10 apiece. If you're wanting to find these backpacks, then you can check out the guide that Cadogenesis made on them, which should help you on your way. On to the final section now, exploration and combat. This is basically going to be the section where I cover everything which doesn't directly tie into the previous parts. First off is the map. By default, you will usually boot up the world map, which allows you to fast travel to previously explored areas, get a general overview of the lands of Amalur, and check out the DLC maps on the border of the main one. But there's also a local map you can switch to, which is surprisingly good. Not only does it allow you to more accurately path out your route, but it can also help you to find specific merchants, crafting tables, and other points of interest. I would highly recommend taking a look at the local map, especially when in towns and cities, as it can be a real help to the player. The mini-map in the top right of the screen is basically just the local map, which means the Detect Hidden skill improves both of these as you invest in it. As you travel around the lands of Amalur, you will regularly come across enemies you either need to fight or run away from. As well as using the various combat abilities you gain from leveling up, or that your weapons grant you, you can also utilise Reckoning mode in order to get a significant boost to your damage, on top of a temporary slow time and stun effect. The start of the game does a decent job of explaining all this, so I won't go too in depth here, and instead will focus on how to get the most out of this incredibly cool power up. In order to build up your fate bar, which allows you to go into Reckoning mode, you need to perform different combat moves. The more you vary up what abilities you use, the faster you will find the fate meter building up. Once full, you can activate it right away, though you may wish to save it up for tougher battles, especially those with multiple enemies, as the final attack of Reckoning mode gives a significant XP boost. If you want to maximise the boost you get from this, try to use it before you eliminate too many enemies, and always use the special ending move on the toughest of the creatures you're facing. One thing to keep a particular eye out for when travelling around are these strange looking stones. These are lore stones, which not only give a small amount of experience and a little bit of spoken lore when you activate them, but also come with set bonuses. If you activate every lore stone within a region, then you get a permanent bonus to your character. You can check your progress with these by clicking on status and then lore stones. The circles which are fully greyed out are the sets where you haven't activated any of the stones, the lit up circles indicates ones where you have activated at least one, and if there's a tick next to them, then that means you've collected them all and therefore get the bonus. The actual effectiveness of these bonuses vary greatly, but they are all positive to the player, so it's always worth trying to get them. And while we're on the subject of permanent bonuses, I quickly want to acknowledge Twists of Fate. These are effects which your character will gain by completing quests, and are typically quite strong. I don't want to spoil what too many of these are, as they do all relate to specific quests, but just know that completing main and faction quests will typically lead you towards these Twists of Fate, making your character stronger as you uncover more of the story of the game. If there's anything you think I missed out on in this guide, then please do leave it in the comments below. Likewise, if you have any questions, then also leave them in the comments, and either myself or another Amalur fan should be able to help you out. If you found this guide helpful, then leave a like. Feel free to check out my other content, and as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.